Welcome. Welcome to our study, which actually today falls on another significant anniversary. I think you remember last time, I think we celebrated the anniversary of Jamgon Mipam Rinpoche. And today we're celebrating the anniversary of Jamgon Khyentse Chögyam Lodra, who is very significant for many of us. This is the previous incarnation of Tsongsa Jamgon Khyentse Rinpoche, and many here are students of Tsongsa Khyentse Rinpoche. There's a lot of teachings that have to do with Tsongsa Khyentse Rinpoche in what we're doing. Also, Tsongsa Khyentse Rinpoche's previous incarnation is Jamgon Khyentse Wangpo. And all of these lamas, Jamgon Khyentse Wangpo had an enormous impact. Tsongsa Khyentse Chögyam Lodra had an enormous impact. And we can see how in this world, in this strange time that we're living in now, Tsongsa Khyentse Rinpoche is, again, having a very significant impact. So it makes sense to really recognize the extraordinary nature of these teachers. And I thought actually to begin today's class with a little bit of storytelling, really. I'm going to be reading some sections from Born in Tibet that has to do with Tsongsa Khyentse Rinpoche. But as I was reading up on this text, there's a preceding section which also I thought should be included in this reading. I think it'll be inspiring for everyone. So we're going to begin today's class with this. So very happy that you're all here and that we can share this together. So Tsongsa Khyentse Chögyam Lodra, there are quite a few photos of him, and there are still students of Tsongsa Khyentse Chögyam Lodra alive, great lamas, such as His Holiness Sakatrinsen, Pewa Rinpoche, and there would be quite a few others. And notably, Chögyam Trungpa Rinpoche was someone who made a strong Dharma connection with Tsongsa Jamgon Khyentse Rinpoche, Tsongsa Khyentse Chögyam Lodra. So I want to read a little bit from Born in Tibet. And he writes here, so this is while he was studying at Shechen. He says, a fortnight later, the course was finished and the summer vacation began. Chögyam Trungpa Rinpoche, his own monastery was called Zurmang. And it was in principle a Kagyu monastery, but very much a Kagyu monastery, practiced a lot of Nyingma teaching. And his predecessor, the 10th Chögyam Trungpa, the 10th Trungpa Rinpoche, was, let's just see here, the 10th Trungpa was very close with Jamgon Kongtrul. And so Jamgon Kongtrul had several incarnations, one of which was called Shichin Kongtrul. And Trungpa Rinpoche studied with this great Lama, Shichin Kongtrul, at the Shichin Monastery. He also studied with a great Lama called Khenpo Gangsha Wangpo. But anyway, and this also a Lama at Shichin Monastery. So Trungpa Rinpoche describes then, says a fortnight later, the course was finished and the summer vacation began. As Jamgon Kongtrul was going back to his residence, he advised me to travel with my monks to visit the famous Khyentse Rinpoche at Tsongsa Monastery, 4 days away in the valley of Chichu. 4 of the professors of Khenpo accompanied us, and we set off southward. On the 3rd day, we stopped at Manikengo, as we had been told the story of a very saintly man who had died there the previous year. We went to the house where he had lived and met his son and his wife, who recounted the miracle that had occurred at the old man's death. This is someone called Sonam Namgyal. And Sonam Namgyal's sons included some Khenpos, one Khenpo, who is a friend of Nyurshu Khenpo Rinpoche. So I heard about Sonam Namgyal from Nyurshu Khenpo. And also he had a yogi son called Lama Jutrak, who I've heard from other friends. So anyway, this man was called Sonam Namgyal, but he was somebody who was in no way famous. It says here, in his lifetime, he had erected a group of Mani stones on which he had carved a great number of mantras and sutras, and he also set up a churton, a stupa among them. In his youth, he had been a servant with a wealthy family, but in middle age, he had left his employment to receive meditational instruction in a monastery. Though he had to work for his living by day, he spent most of his nights in contemplation, only allowing himself 2 to 3 hours sleep. His compassion was so great that he always helped everyone in need and opened his house at all times to pilgrims and the very poor. While carrying out his daily work, he used to practice meditation in his own way, though his son, who was a monk, told him that he should carry out more formal spiritual exercises, but this he could not accept. Though he had hitherto been in good health, 3 years before his death he fell ill and his family began to be very worried. Yet he himself appeared to become increasingly happy. He composed and sang his own songs of praise instead of the traditional Buddhist chants. As his illness became more and more serious, lamas and doctors were called in, with his son telling him that now he must remember all the teachings he had received, at which he smiled and saying, I have forgotten it all, and in a way there's nothing to remember. Everything is illusion, yet I am confident that all is well. Just before his death, the old man said, when I die, you must not move my body for a week. This is all that I desire. They wrapped his dead body in old clothes and called in lamas and monks to recite and chant. The body was carried into a small room, little bigger than a cupboard, and it was noted that although the old man had been tall, the body appeared to have become smaller. At the same time, a rainbow was seen over the house. On the 6th day, on looking into the room, the family saw it had grown still smaller. A funeral service was arranged for the morning of the 8th day, and men came to take the body to the cemetery. When they undid the coverings, there was nothing inside except nails and hair. The villagers were astounded, for it would have been impossible for anyone to have come into the room. The door was always kept locked, and the window of the little resting place was much too small. The family reported the event to the authorities and also went to ask Khyentse Rinpoche about the meaning of it. He told them that such a happening had been reported several times in the past, and that the body of the saintly man had been absorbed into the light. They showed me the nails and the hair and the small room where he had kept the body. We heard of such things happening, but never at first hand, so we went round the village to ask for further information. So this is Trungpa Rinpoche and his party. Everyone had seen the rainbow and knew that the body had disappeared. This village was on the main route from China to Lhasa, and the people told me that the previous year, when the Chinese heard about it, they were furious and said the story must not be talked about. The following day, we reached, actually you can read about this also in a book by Tuku Tundrup. It's called Buddha Mind, or the Practice of Dzogchen, and there's a story in there about this. I think it's I can't remember. Anyway, his name is Sonam Namgyal, so there's something about that. And then also in Chögyam Namkha Nobu's book, Crystal and the Way of Light, it's described in there. And Chögyam Namkha Nobu describes his uncle, who was a great meditator, who lived nearby, and he was crying because he was saying, we never took teachings from this man, even though he was such a great meditator. We just didn't know that how great he was. So his uncle was deeply sad. But then again, Chögyam Namkha Nobu's uncle, this one called Tenzin Nobu, also was somebody who achieved the rainbow body. So extraordinary persons and extraordinary culture that we had at this time. So Trungpa Rinpoche continues. The following day, we reached the monastery of Tsongsa, which belonged to the Sakya school. The present Khyentse Rinpoche had been brought up there. His guru had been Sito of Katok Monastery, the disciple of the renowned teacher, the great Khyentse Rinpoche, whose path the present Khyentse had followed. So here we're talking about Tsongsa Khyentse Chögyam Lodro, who's on the page, how do you say, on the left, the photo on the left here on your screen. Trungpa Rinpoche continues, on our arrival, we found there were more visitors than residents. They had come from all the different Buddhist schools of Tibet, but the seminars specialized in a great variety of teachings. We were given accommodation in the monastery and made an appointment to be received by Khyentse Rinpoche on the following day. Our party went together for a formal introduction, exchanging the traditional scarves, etc., after which the Lama talked to me alone. His room had been left exactly as it was in the time of the great Khyentse, and seemed still to exude the power of his spirituality. Khyentse came down from his throne and sat on a cushion in front of me with a welcoming smile. There was a sense of peace, happiness, and warmth all around him. But there was also a sense of awe. His words were so profound. He said that he was glad to meet a disciple of Jamgon Kongtrul, in particular, one who is the incarnation of the 10th Trungpa Tugu, who had also been one of his own teachers. He added, "You and I are the sons of the same spiritual father." He felt that he had no further teaching to give me, since I had studied under so great a master already. But at my request, he agreed to perform the empowerment rite of Kala Chakra, the Wheel of Time, for our party, and would also instruct me privately. Although I was only there for a month, I learned a great deal, and a deep understanding grew between us. Khyentse Rinpoche said to me, "You must look after and guide yourself, as in the future there will be no further teachers. A new era has begun in which the pure doctrine of the Lord Buddha lies in the hands of individuals. Each one is separately responsible. But I do not think that we can carry on in the way that we have done up until now. We can no longer rely on groups and communities. The situation is very serious. Many of us are old, and perhaps it is young people like you, the new generation, who shall bear the burden." While we were at Tsongsa, we had a strange experience. Knowing that the monastery was the center for many great visitors, lamas, scholars, and devotees, the communists came with a propaganda film, complete with its own batteries, and to give us a show. It covered their activities in Tibet from 1949 to 1953 and showed how much they had accomplished there with their so-called improvements, such as roads, schools, and hospitals, and how the Red Army had been warmly welcomed by the Tibetans. Since there was no public hall in which they could show the film, they made use of one of the sacred temples. Khyentse Rinpoche was forced to be present, for if he were there, everyone else would have to attend. This was the first time I had seen a film. The morning of our departure was a sad one, especially with those last words from Khyentse Rinpoche uppermost in my mind. I asked him to promise that we would meet again and that I would be given more time to study under him. His presence seemed to be with me for many miles on the journey. So this was a little bit about Trungpa Rinpoche's meeting with Jamyang Khyentse Chögyam Lodro. So we'll return to our text. And this might be the last section, really. I think this might be the last, yeah. We'll just do this part here. So I could, yeah, let's see how, we might just have a few classes left. So here, having invoked the great masters of the 8 practice lineages, and having supplicated them that we might get over our normal superficial preoccupations, and our mind might turn to the Dharma, that our Dharma might progress on the path, that the Dharma might eliminate confusion, that confusion might dawn as wisdom, then Jamgon Kongtrul writes, invoking the teacher, "Grant your blessing so that I give birth to deep sadness. Grant your blessings, so that my worthless schemes are curtailed. Grant your blessings, so that I take to heart the certainty of death. Grant your blessings, so that conviction in karma arises in me. Grant your blessings, so that the path is free from obstacles. Grant your blessings, so that I am able to exert myself in practice. Grant your blessings, so that unfortunate circumstances are brought to the path. Grant your blessings, so that I continually apply my antidotes. Grant your blessings, so that genuine devotion arises in me. Grant your blessings, so that I glimpse the natural state. Grant your blessings, so that insight is awakened in my heart. Grant your blessings, so that I uproot confusion. Grant your blessings, so that I attain Buddhahood in one lifetime. Deep sadness, Chögyam, means to understand the futility and suffering of samsara. And in that we overlook this, we're supplicating that we might give birth to a disillusionment, a deep sadness about this state of affairs. So we're supplicating that all our pointless plans, we won't pursue them, that we understand how death is imminent, how we understand that what we do has an impact. Whatever we do in terms of physical and verbal action, and particularly what we're doing in terms of our thoughts, has an impact. We supplicate the teacher that our path, we aspire that our path won't be sidetracked, that we won't have obstacles, things that prevent us from practicing. We supplicate that we'll be able to apply ourselves completely to the practice. We supplicate that the inevitable adverse circumstances that always happen when we're practicing, that they're not something that we resent, that we say, oh, I can't practice because all these difficult circumstances are there in my life. If we fall prey to that kind of logic, then we're never going to be practicing, because there's always going to be adverse, unfortunate circumstances. Rather, we have teachings that enable us to see the value of unfortunate circumstances and where we can transform these negative circumstances onto the path. This we have a lot of teachings in what's called the Chögyam. If you look at the 7 points of mind training, the third point of the mind training is all about this. Grant your blessings so that I continually apply my antidotes, that we never lax with applying ourselves, that every situation is met with meditation. Grant your blessings so that genuine devotion arises in me, this being really the cause for blessing, this being the cause that we could see the co-emergent wisdom. So that's where we then supplicate, grant your blessings so that I glimpse co-emergent wisdom, the natural state, the actual natural condition of our mind. Grant your blessings so that insight is awakened in my heart, so that this is something that we don't just glimpse, but that this actually takes root in ourselves. Grant your blessings so that I uproot confusion, put an end to that which causes suffering, and grant your blessings that I attain Buddhahood, the outcome and the fruition of the path in this very lifetime. So last time we began this section called visualization. So we've spoken about the way that the Vajrayana relates to the general Buddhist teachings. We've talked about the foundations of the Vajrayana, how this teaching lives as an actual living tradition. What are the foundation of Vajrayana, namely empowerment. And now we're looking at the actual, following the empowerment, then the actual practice. And the practice of Vajrayogini, like any deity practice, is recognizing that enlightenment is basic to us, ourselves. Despite the confusion, then enlightenment never ever the original ground of what we actually truly are, beyond just the superficial, fleeting constructs of our confusion, is the abiding, enlightened nature. And this we integrate through the practice of sadhana. And sadhana has two aspects, what we call the development stage, utpatikrama, kirim, and sampanakrama, development stage, where the development stage has to do with engaging our experience of ourselves and the world in terms of integrating this vision of deity as innate to us, in this case Vajrayana. And the sampanakrama is again the vipassana relinquishing any reference point, even a reference point of the development stage that recognizes the enlightened nature. So I'm just going to go over the first paragraph that we covered last time before we continue. So Trungpa says, a practitioner's connection to and understanding of the iconography come about through the visualization practice of Vajrayana. There are two stages of visualization practice, utpatikrama or kirim in Tibetan, and sampanakrama or zorim in Tibetan. Utpatikrama literally means development stage, and sampanakrama means fulfillment stage. Utpatikrama is the process of visualizing the deity, in this case, Vajrayana. In the self-visualization, the practitioner visualizes him or herself as the Yida. The visualization arises from shunyata or emptiness, as do all tantric visualizations. So what we mean with the visualization arises from shunyata means it arises out of the wisdom that no longer is entangled in our projections, and rather settles into a recognition of what is. And this is, of course, what we've been working on throughout the entire Buddhist path with the practice of meditation, relinquishing confusion and allowing us to connect with reality. And reality, the nature of reality is such that it cannot be grasped. This absence of anything that we can grasp, we refer to as the experience of shunyata or emptiness. And it's within that nature of reality that then the deity arises. So, quoting from the text, the sadhana of Vajrayana, then Trungpa quotes, all the dharmas comprising grasping and fixation become empty. From within emptiness arises the triangular source of dharmas. On that is the nature of my consciousness. Like a fish leaping from water, I arise in the body of Jetsun Vajrayana. So this is where we came to last time. Trungpa continues, so the process of visualizing oneself as the idam comes first from the experience of emptiness and egolessness. Out of that arises the source of dharmas, the abstract form of co-emergence, which is then iconographically it's a triangle. And on that, the practitioner visualizes him or herself as the yidam. The visualization, therefore, is essentially empty as well, meaning this is a manifest form of that which cannot be grasped. So even though we cannot grasp our reality, it nevertheless appears. So we would always understand that emptiness does not mean that there's nothing there. It's just where we begin to understand the nature of phenomena. And that's why we say that form, quoting the Heart Sutra, form or appearance is emptiness. Emptiness is appearance. Form is no other than emptiness, and emptiness is no other than form. So, of course, here within the visualized form of Vajrayana, like Trungpa says, the visualization therefore is essentially empty as well. The practice of visualization is identifying oneself with the realizing the deity as the non-manifested or empty manifestation of basic enlightened nature. The form of the idam, including her clothing, ornaments, and stance, represents aspects of the enlightened state of mind. So this, we will look at the details of this a little bit later. Trungpa continues, so when one visualizes oneself as a blazing youthful red lady decked with bone ornaments. One is not particularly trying to conjure up an exotic costume as the latest fashion, but one is identifying oneself with Vajrayana as the embodiment of wisdom and compassion. So identifying oneself with Vajrayana is understanding that one's true nature is Vajrayana. We, of course, have personalities, stories, karma, and so on, but all of these are fleeting constructs based on a delusional practice of duality. So we, in identifying ourselves with our ordinary form, are essentially identifying ourselves with a delusional construct, whereas with Vajrayana, we're identifying ourselves with something that is the manifestation and expression of wisdom, of this condition of shunyata. Manifesting out of shunyata, out of compassion. So this embodiment is something that's not driven by the usual confused karma, but something that manifests as an expression of wisdom and something that is moved by compassion. Particularly in the Nyingma tradition, we talk about how the deity is visualized on the basis of three samadhis. One is the samadhi of emptiness, then there's the samadhi of compassion, and then there's the seed samadhi, in which consciousness begins to manifest as deity on the basis of what we call seed syllable, which actually we discussed earlier in the study of Journey Without Goal. So in this way, the deity manifests as an expression of reality and as the embodiment of wisdom and compassion. Trungpa continues, the visualization of oneself as Vajrayana is called the Samaya Sattva, the sacred bondage of one's being. So sacred bondage is Samaya. The Sattva is then one's being. So this is the aspect of one's being in which there's the discipline of the visualization. Trungpa says the Samaya Sattva is basically the expression of the Samayas of body, speech, and mind. It expresses one's commitment to the teacher and the teachings and one's trust in one's fundamental state of mind. Having visualized the Samaya Sattvas of basic being, one invites what is known as Jhana Sattva. Jhana Sattva is another level of being or experience. Jhana is a state of wakefulness or openness, whereas Samaya is an experience of bondage, of being solidly grounded in one's experience. Jhana literally means wisdom, or more accurately, being wise. One invites this state of wisdom, this level of wakefulness, into one's own imperfect visualization, so that the visualization becomes alive with a feeling of openness and humor. So we could say the Samaya Sattva has to do with something that, well, it has to do with skillful means. It's something to do that corresponds with our notions of body, speech, and mind in terms of form. Jhana, however, is completely intangible, and it really is like Trungpa says, being wise. It's not wisdom that's something that one cultivates or develops, but it is the abiding innate condition. And while we have this nature, it's basic to us, because we still have some notion that there is greater wisdom out there and we're not sufficiently wise, then even though we have the visualization of the form of the Samaya Sattva, there is in the sadhana itself the practice of invoking the Jhana Sattva, the wisdom. So while we already naturally possess this wisdom, the skillful means of the Vajrayana again and again is to make the projections of our confusion, to turn them into vehicle for wisdom. So thinking that the guru is greater, the deity is greater, then we accommodate that and then invite this deity to bless our visualization with the true wisdom. And with the basis of this, the Jhana Sattva dissolving into the Samaya Sattva, then there's a sense of, like Trungpa says, coming alive with a feeling of openness. This is unconditional. It's what is there, which we had ignored, and humor, the wider perspective that no longer is entangled in the ordinary practices of objectification and dualistic clinging. Trungpa continues, at the conclusion of the visualization practice, the visualization is dissolved back into the emptiness, and one meditates or rests in that non-dual state of mind. This is the sampanna krama, or fulfillment stage. It's said in the tantric text that the proper understanding of visualization practice is that the utpatikrama and sampanna krama are not fundamentally different. That is, in this case, the sampanna krama experience of emptiness and the utpatikrama experience of form emptiness should not be seen as two things, but as one expression of the world of the co-emergent mother. So the completion stage practice, the dissolution of the visualization, you could say, has no reference point whatsoever, simply just settling into this space. Like Saraha in Marpa's Dream says, space in intercourse with space. So in that freedom from reference point, we have then the completion stage, the sampanna krama, and then the development stage practice, which is dissolved at the end. This is then the manifestation of that wisdom, that the emptiness nature. So that's the deity, the form of the deity. But whether we are dwelling in form or non-form, they're in no way seen as contradictory. They are the spontaneous presence of the very nature of reality. So we shouldn't see this as being something, these two stages as something that's fundamentally different. We engage in the practice of the deity in order to integrate our body, speech, and mind. And yet this body, speech, and mind is never something, this integration is never about fixating on anything. And as the deity, we understand this nature as arising from emptiness. And yet, to purify any tendency towards fixating on this as absolute, then we have the dissolution stage. So we would say that purifies what we call eternalism, the extreme of eternalism. And then to, again, counter the extreme of nihilism, then again we reappear as the deity. So understanding that these two aspects are not in any way different, then we engage in this practice of the two stages. And yet these two are not in any way different. So like Trungpa says, these are all one expression of the world, the experience, the realization of the co-emergent mother. Then he continues, sampanna krama meditation is similar to the practice of shamatha vipassana. In fact, without prior training in these meditation practices, it's impossible to practice sampanna krama. So we should never think the practice of meditation is just for beginners, and that we're only really practicing when we're sitting, chanting liturgies and playing playing with damarus and bells and holding vajras and doing ritual. That's Vajrayana practice. That's just a way of integrating. That's just a practice of yoga, but the objective of that yoga practice is the insight that we gain from shamatha vipassana practice, that we consolidate through the two stages. So like Trungpa says, without any training in proper meditation practice, shamatha vipassana, it is impossible to practice the completion stage practice of the Vajrayana and even the development stage practice. Trungpa continues, sampanna krama is an expression of vastness. Experiencing the Vajra mind of Vajrayogini is so deep and vast that if thoughts arise, they do not become highlights. They are small fish in a huge ocean of space. So within the expanse and experience, the Vajra mind of Vajrayogini, whatever appears is never anything that disturbs Vajrayogini. It's merely just seen as expression. So that's where the yogi continually abides in this experience of Vajrayogini. So Vajrayogini practice is not something that we sit down and then do once we're sitting with the liturgy. Once we've received empowerment of a deity, then we are empowered as the deity. And this sadhana really just is something that serves to reiterate, consolidate, remind ourselves of the vision that we're integrating. And within that great vision, then whatever arises is really just seen as ripples on the surface or manifestations of clouds in space. There's never ever anything that really disturbs this great Vajra mind of the deity of Vajrayogini. So now we'll look at the Vajrayogini principle and its iconography. Trungpa says, an examination of the meaning of the following praise to Vajrayogini from the sadhana may help us to understand the Vajrayogini principle in relation to the iconography of Vajrayogini. The praise begins, Bhagavati Vajrayogini, personification of Vajra emptiness, blazing with a kalpa-ending fire, uttering the terrifying sound of Hum. We prostrate to Vajra Chandali. So whenever we have sadhana, every word has so much significance. And when we practice Vajrayana, we're not engaging in philosophy. We have commentaries that explain all these words, but the sadhanas themselves are just continually pointing to an experience of a reality that lies beyond the ordinary dualistic mind. So, from here, then unpacking then the praise, he says Bhagavati means blessed one. This stanza refers to Vajrayogini as the anthropomorphic form of Shunyata, the personification of Vajra emptiness. It then praises her fiery quality of passion and cosmic lust. In the iconography, Vajrayogini's body is red and blazes with rays of light, which is described here as blazing with the kalpa-ending fire. This is her Padma family quality, which transmute neurotic passion into all-consuming compassion. Kalpa means historical era. The kalpa-ending fire in Indian mythology is an explosion of the sun, which burns up the solar system and brings an end to the kalpa, to that eon. Vajrayogini's passion is so bright and so consuming that it is likened to that fire. The terrifying sound of Hum expresses the wrath of her passion, which is terrifying to ego. Chandali, Tumo in Tibetan, is the yogic heat, cosmic heat in yogic practice, which is again the Vajrayogini principle of passion arising free from habitual tendencies. Such passion is immensely powerful. It radiates warmth. It radiates its warmth in all directions. It simultaneously nurtures the welfare of beings and blazes to destroy the neurotic tendencies of ego. The praise continues. Your sour's face, manifesting non-thought, the unchanging Dharmakaya. You benefit all beings with wrathful mercy, accomplishing their welfare with horrific accoutrements. We prostrate to you who benefit beings in non-thought. Trungpa says, non-thought is an important aspect of the Vajrayogini principle. It is the experience of mind totally free from the habitual chatter of ego, freed from the grasping and fixation that give rise to neurotic thought patterns. Until the aggression and wildness of mind are tamed through meditation practice, there is no possibility of experiencing the non-thought possibilities in one's mind. So non-thought is something that we might think that means that there's no more thoughts in the mind, but it actually means that at this point, we, through the practice of shamatha vipassana, are no longer controlled by the arising of our psychological material. So it doesn't mean that psychological material just stop, because if that stopped, we would just be left just unprepared. We would just not be challenged anymore. We would be completely sort of, it wouldn't help us at all if all the aggressions and wildness of the mind were to stop. So that's not the point. But it is that we're no longer controlled by them. So through the practice of shamatha vipassana, then we experience the freedom of mind that is not contaminated by this confusion, by these arisings and habitual shadows of the ego. Until we have that, this experience of non-thought, then any kind of practice like the one we're describing here is very difficult. Then it's just basically competing. You can think of yourself as a deity, but then you come back to my old pedestrian self. And that kind of struggle takes place. So that's where the foundations of experience are indispensable for the engaging of into the Vajrayana path. And so this like it says in the Chetsunyintik, the experience of non-thought, the samadhi of non-thought, this samadhi of non-thought is indispensable for all meditation. It is like having a well-cultivated field. So for our mind to be a place in which we could cultivate the qualities of the path and of the various samadhis, ways of training the mind, we need to have this experience of non-thought. Vajrayana, Trungpa then says, is often depicted with a sow's head over her right ear, sitting up here. When she wears this ornament, she is referred to as Vajravarahi, Vajra sow. The sow traditionally represents ignorance or stupidity. In this case, the sow's head symbolizes the transmutation of ignorance or delusion into the Vajra ignorance, which is non-thought or complete spaciousness of mind. This stanza equates non-thought with Dharmakaya, which roughly translated is the primordial mind of Buddha. The practice of the Vajrayana sadhana is very much connected with realizing this primordial non-reference point. The purpose of the sadhana practice is not so much to cut immediate thoughts as it is to cut the habitual tendencies that are the root of discursive thought. So we're not going to be, again, stopping phenomena, but rather we're stopping the grasping. Like Tilopa said to Naropa, you're not, don't cut the object. Shinbe Machin, sorry, Shinbe Machin. He says, Naropa, you're not caught. You're not caught by the shenpa or the grasping onto the object. You're caught by the subject that grasps. Cut that grasping. So this is then the purpose of this sadhana, getting to the bottom of where our delusion happens. Then Trungpa says, the horrific accoutrements referred to in this stanza are the necklace of freshly severed heads that Vajrayana wears. It says in the sadhana that she wears this necklace because the 51 samskaras are completely purified. Samskara means formation, which refers to concepts. Vajrayogini's necklace of heads signifies that all habitual concepts are purified or destroyed in non-thought. And again, this is not where all of a sudden we're not having thoughts, but this means that we're no longer controlled by them, that they're purified. They're left in their own state in which they have no power. They might have particular faces, they might have particular expressions, but they have no power anymore. So Vajrayogini is in no way controlled by these, and rather she wears them as a necklace. So we see very often in the depictions of Vajrayogini, this necklace, let's see here, this necklace of the severed heads, 51 in number, and these refer to the 51. These are the 51 samskaras, or the 51 mental factors or mental events that we read about in the Abhidharma, which is universal, really, sort of a universal understanding of the events of the mind. So then Trungpa then says the praise continues. We'll stop here, and I'll just see if there's some questions. Okay, towards the end of Guru Yoga in the Longchen Nyingtik, there is an instruction to visualize dissolving into Sampanakrama. Is it right to practice that with the understanding of Sampanakrama explained here? Yes, that's okay. That's absolutely fine. Do not seek to cut all the phenomena. Seek to cut the root of the mind. Sounds right? Yeah. It's something like this is what Tilopa was instructing. Naropa. Yeah. Okay. Look, I'll continue a little bit. There's no other questions right now, so I'll just continue a little bit more. It says, terrifying heroine who annihilates the unsuitable with 3 eyes, clenched fangs, the absolute Trikaya. Your terrifying cry cuts off the kleshas. We prostrate to you, subjugate and conquer the Maras. So Trungpa comments, the Vajrayogini is frequently called the conqueror of the Maras, which are the forces of worldly confusion. In the stories of the Buddha's enlightenment, Mara, quote, the evil one, unquote, sends his daughters, the 4 Maras, to tempt Shakyamuni and his armies to attack him. Vanquishing them, Shakyamuni becomes the Buddha, the awakened one. Thus, the basic idea of Vajrayogini is just the basic idea of Vajrayogini as the conqueror of the Maras is the conquest of ego. From ego's point of view, Vajrayogini is terrifying because her wakefulness is so piercing and uncompromising. At another point, the sadhana says, grimacing wrathfully to subdue the 4 Maras, she clenches her fangs and bites her lower lip. This further explains the stance as a reference to Vajrayogini's fierceness. The reference to Vajrayogini's 3 eyes means that nothing escapes the vision of Vajrayogini. Therefore, ego has nowhere to hide. The sadhana also says, because she is the knower of the past, present, and future, she rolls her 3 furious, bloodshot eyes. The notion that Vajrayogini is the absolute Trikaya is that her wisdom and skillful means manifest on all levels of body and mind. The Dharmakaya level of the absolute primordial mind, the Sambhogakaya level of energy, emotions, and symbols, the Nimanakaya level of manifested form or body. The Trikaya also refers to the levels of body, speech, and mind in one's practice, which are the level of physical body, the emotions and concepts, and the basic spaciousness of mind. Vajrayogini joins all of those levels together, and again, she leaves no place for the Maras to hide. So again, Vajrayogini seeing, Vajrayogini being the wakefulness that we're describing here, there's no place for the Maras. Maras only fester in the shadows. They only fester in confusion. But in this direct vipassana, this direct seeing of reality, there's nowhere for maras to gain any traction or any hold on us. And that she is the absolute Trikaya is that she's the embodiment of the Dharmakaya, which is the absence of confusion. And from within the Dharmakaya, there is the qualities of that enlightened absence of confusion. So that's the level of manifestation or energy. And that, in turn, is not just caught up in itself for something that cares for the world around. It's not held back by a barrier of duality, of positing self and other. And so that's where the Nirmanakaya level that spontaneously benefits for the sake of all sentient beings and manifests. So that's where we would say she is the body, speech, and the three kayas, or the embodies the nature of awakening as it exists in terms of its intangible absolute nature, Dharmakaya, in terms of the qualities that manifest, the Sambhogakaya, and the way it spontaneously manifests for sentient beings, the Nirmanakaya. So this is where Vajrayogini, the single form, embodies all these qualities, and it's all within this space then that there's nowhere for confusion really to gain any hold on us. Let's see if there's any questions here. Jakob, can you please say a bit about how Vajrayogini aligns with the Guru? How to think about the two? Well, Vajrayogini is the Guru's wisdom. So on the basis of the Guru Yoga, then the Guru's wisdom is something that becomes clear to us. Mingling our mind with the Guru's mind, there's a sense of something sacred within ourselves. And it's to integrate that sacred quality that we then proceed with the practice of Vajrayogini. So this is where we take this co-emergent wisdom that we encounter in the Guru Yoga, and we integrate it then. So this is, you could say, Vajrayogini is the natural continuation of the Guru Yoga, particularly as it's taught within the Kagyu tradition. But this is also how, in the extension of the completion of Nunda practice, that we then continue with the main practices of Vajrayana. So whether it's Vajrayogini or it's any deity, these are essentially the ways of integrating the Guru's wisdom, and we would simply just say that the deity is the Guru's wisdom. Okay, let's see. It says, experiencing the Vajra mind of Vajrayogini is like they are small fish in a huge space experiencing. Could you please explain more about this metaphor? Why there are still small fish? Does it represent consciousness other than Vajra mind? Yeah, it represents the mind that manifests. You know, we would say the yogi doesn't have different thoughts than the rest of us. So as it says, as Rinpoche, he says, the way of arising is as before. The way of the way that they're liberated is where we have the difference. So the difference lies in the way that thoughts are liberated. So sublime beings, yogis, ourselves as Vajrayogini, we experience the same thoughts that have always been there, but the way that we relate to them is very different. And again, this is where we need to have a foundation in meditation practice, in which we are not any longer controlled, where we begin to at least have some inkling of how we needn't be controlled by the arisings of the thoughts. And certainly in the case of then fully embracing Vajrayogini sadhana, then there's the acknowledgement that this vast open space of Vajrayogini's mind, while it allows for ordinary thoughts to arise, ordinary thoughts don't really constitute any kind of something that we would stumble over or that would cause any problems. So that's where we would say then that that they're just ripples on the surface, or small fish that sort of pop up and pop out of the ocean and sort of comfortably dive back into the ocean. The ocean is not deeply disturbed, just like the sky is not disturbed by the presence of clouds, regardless of whether there's storm clouds or sweet white clouds. The sky is not affected. So the Vajrayogini, the Vajra mind of Vajrayogini is in no way disturbed by the arising thoughts. Just like also we have this necklace that she wears, all the various mental events. This is such a, I was just thinking how generous Trungpa was in offering this. This was, as I've mentioned before, this was part of a catalog that came with an exhibition that traveled around. It was called the Silk Route and the Diamond Path, and which, of course, highlighted the cultures of the Silk Route, but also their spirituality, particularly then with regards to the Vajrayana teaching. And so it would, I mean, I don't even know what that exists. I saw the catalog many years ago. Can't remember what the content was, but I'm just thinking that so generous of Trungpa to give such a concise presentation, so wholehearted to actually present this to a modern audience, really seeing the modern audience would be able to understand this. And for us who are practitioners, this is an extremely profound teaching that really gathers so many really essential points for Vajrayana practice. So we shouldn't also be thinking, oh yeah, this is for Vajrayogini, but I'm practicing Vajrakilaya, or I'm practicing some other deity, or some other guru sadhana, or Dakini sadhana, whatever it might be. This is universal for all Vajrayana practice, really. Okay, we're coming up to the hour, so I think we'll conclude here. Thank you very much for joining me in this study. I wonder how long this, don't think there's so much left, huh? Oh, there's still a little bit. Yeah. Still a little bit left. We'll have a few more sessions. Are there different energies or qualities that the practitioner thinks about when practicing with Vajrayogini, like the qualities of mother or protector? Well, we could say that there's the quality of mother in the sense of this vast, generous warmth that accommodates. Protector, sure, in the sense of someone that accomplishes everything that needs to be accomplished. We would say really that all deities are one in the expanse of wisdom. Of course, here there's some emphasis here, and the emphasis is more on this quality of non-thought and quality of accommodating the experience and the accommodation of this Vajra mind that we're talking about. But of course, we can see Vajrayogini as a mother, as a protector, yeah. But we shouldn't limit ourselves. And this is more about us really just connecting with meditation practice, this spacious quality, where we shouldn't second guess. It's a little bit of, we have tendencies to sometimes philosophize when we're practicing, we're thinking about practicing. We should just do the yoga, visualizing ourselves and appreciating, of course, the symbolism that we're looking at, but at the same time also keeping it very simple, just staying with our experience of the Vajrayana and the Vajrayani's world, really, and integrating that without too much, you could say, elaborations, without too much second guessing, just sort of engaging it wholeheartedly. And that really goes for any visualization practice that we do. So if we're practicing Guru Yoga, we're practicing other deities, this applies as well. All right, thank you very much. Let's see if there's, I don't think I brought up all that. Let's see the dedication. Through this virtue, may all beings throughout existence awaken together without a single being left behind. In the pure realm of the luminous essence, the ground of the great perfection, may they remain inseparable from the kayas and wisdoms. Hey, by the way, before you all leave, let me just say that talking about Tongtse Rinpoche, it's this year is actually Tongtse Rinpoche's 60th year, and we somehow have caught on to the modern ways of celebrating Rinpoche's birthday, something you'd never do in traditional Tibetan context. But Friday is hence that today, the 18th of June, and across the world, from various different centers, I think we're doing 5 different sessions of green Tara, based on Rinpoche's adaptation of Chögyam Rinpoche's what's known as the Drolchok or the Saptik Drona, the Tara practice from Chögyam Rinpoche, and we'll be doing that then through Zoom. So there'll be 5. I think there's 5 places that we're doing that throughout the day. So we're starting here in Australia. It will be 10 a.m. to roughly 12, and then there'll be other places as well. I know Taiwan will be doing it. There'll be different places. So just to remind you, this will be on Friday, so don't forget that. Through all our births, wherever we may be born, may we be endowed with 7 good qualities of the higher realms. As soon as we are born, may we meet with the Dharma and have the freedom to practice it properly. At that time, may we please the Holy Gurus and practice the Dharma throughout the day and night. Realizing the Dharma and accomplishing its essential meaning, may we cross the ocean of existence in that life. Thoroughly teaching the Holy Dharma in this world, may we never tire of accomplishing the benefit of others. By this vast benefit of others, without partiality or bias, may all attain Buddhahood together. Thank you. Yes, it's true. I said the Friday, the 18th, but of course that's here in Australia, so it will be June 17th in other parts of the world, for example, North America. Yeah. Thank you for pointing that out.